Welcome everybody. This is the second virtual connection seminar for the University of New South Wales, Australia. And we've got our guest speaker from, and we've just confirmed, Ottawa, Ontario, 90 miles south of Ottawa, Ontario. And it's Dr. Anthony Betrus. Is that how I pronounce it properly, Anthony? Tony? And he's a professor of educational technology at the State University of New York at Potsdam. His main interests are in, obviously, gaming, but gaming and learning, how we can use gaming in education. And I've particularly got Tony in here today, you know, to show us what he's been up to with a lot of his research, but also to see if we can see how gaming and could inform higher education as well. So I might let Tony take it away, and then if you've got any questions, you could use the chat pod down the side. There's a place there to use to do that. And I've got a couple of questions a bit later I'm going to throw at Tony when we get to it. So, and Tony's going to share lots of things with us, screen sharing and all that sort of stuff. So thanks very much, Tony. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Let me first turn off the air conditioning. It's hot here. So yes, my name's Dr. Anthony Betrus, and this is not my normal attire. It's my birthday today, so it's my birthday hat.
Oh, nice.
Now for another 3 hours. So yes, I've got some things to share with you. I'll kind of pop on my screen share if I could. You should be able to see that. So it's just a bunch of pictures. You may not be able to see it in the feed you're getting, but it just means I wear a lot of different hats. So far in this presentation, I put on two. Let me put on a third, and you'll see it when I come back to me. But I do a lot of different things, but the main thing I would say this presentation is about the spirit of play and how play interacts with STEM and how they're very much codependent. So that's a little bit about me. And let's kind of move on. I'll show you a couple of lines. I always like to have an origin story. Every evil villain should, or hero, I suppose. But basically, it is a story about play, kind of start to finish. And that's what I kind of do now in my job. I'm finally promoted to full professor. So as a full professor, my senior colleague here informed me that I'm officially dead weight, which means I can do whatever I want to do. So if I'm going to do whatever I want to do, I'm going to do what I think is the most valuable. And to me, that's really STEM activities and play. It's been my inspiration for a while. I did a presentation a little while back, just to give you an idea. I'm not going to actually go through this whole presentation, but this is gamification. This slide is valuable just to kind of break down. You probably have already seen this, where you've got points, badges, leaderboards. You've also got levels and achievements that are based. This is kind of like cheap and easy gaming on the fly. If you want to just gamify what you already do, you don't really need to change your content so much. You just need to kind of add these pieces to it. It can be effective, but at the same time, cheap and easy isn't always necessarily the most effective, although it sometimes is better than nothing. So this is a little about me, basically a lot of exploration, a lot of playing. You can see on the right using things that aren't necessarily meant to be used for that purpose, but repurposed as a ski pole. That's snow, by the way. I know I'm informed that some of you may or may not have seen snow. But in any case, so this is my daughter kind of doing the same thing. That spoon is for putting over your eye. That's a seeing eye chart that she came up with. So she's sort of repurposing some of the same household tools. And it's that spirit, that sort of seeing things for the multi-purpose things that they are, that really is the heart of STEM and exploration. So this is me in my sandbox. We're going to get to a virtual sandbox a little bit later. This is my daughter's sandbox. This looks like this artist space. In the middle you see a YouTube video. And then we have, hold on. Let's see. There I am. Then you see all sorts of crafting materials kind of around it. So that's a little bit about MySpace. I'm actually going to stop for a second and then kind of switch gears a little bit. So I'm going to go to screen share and off. There's me again. Hello. So you guys see me back on again? All set? Okay. So I guess what I'd like to talk about, if you don't mind, is how the various titles and positions and hats merge together, and how it's important to keep the spirit of each of those together. So one, I mentioned I'm a professor here. This is my office back here. So you see back over my shoulder, Captain Kirk. This is my pointing device. There's Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. Over my shoulder here, those are all a bunch of games that I kind of keep on the shelves. Those are the really important ones. And I got a degree at one point. You can see that kind of over there from Indiana University and their IST program. Up here, if you didn't notice this over here, if you can kind of point to him, that's Stone Cold Steve Austin. I like to put him in my office because Stone Cold Steve Austin made it into my most recent game that I put together. It's called Teaching Bad Apples. And Teaching Bad Apples is a game for pre-service teachers. And one of the cards we have in here is the Stone Cold Stunner, which I kind of like that one. And it was also, interestingly enough, it was one of the ways I made inroads socially when I first came into the department, is some of my colleagues were into wrestling, so I kind of got into it with them for whatever reason. So all in that sort of spirit of play. So in any case, let me go back to the screen share and pop back over here and share. And here, and I'm going to pop back out of this for a second, show you a little bit about SUNY Potsdam. We're going on our 200th year, so we're kind of an old institution. We've been doing pre-service teaching before people called it pre-service teaching. We called it normal schools back then, 200 years ago. We were called St. Lawrence Academy, and we're about to kick off a whole series of bicentennial events coming up here starting in the fall, which is very exciting. So that's SUNY Potsdam. I do want to point out this page before we go too much farther. This is sort of switching gears a little bit. This is academies.cyberlearning.org, and this is one of the guys I work for. His name is Dr. Kutan, and Dr. Apu Kutan used to run. You guys are big into tennis in Australia, correct? That's right. Okay. So this guy ran the Bolletary Tennis Academy, and he trained stars like Andre Agassi and Monica Seles and Jim Courier. So what he did is he sold the academy after he'd run his total systems solution, and he sold it, and he basically went into philanthropy and nonprofit. And so that's how I got kind of connected with him. And now I am the National Director of STEM Plus Academies. So I kind of like his right-hand man when it comes to doing the STEM implementation. So as such, I get a little bit more reach than I probably would if I were just staying here in SUNY Siberia. So we have, if you look over here, we have 24 academies in various locations around the country. Kind of northeast, because that's where I am, but then you can kind of see they're in different places around the country as well. And if you look down here, you can see each of the schools down here. So we got a little bit of a spotlight on Pennsylvania because we have quite a few schools in Pennsylvania, and we just had our Academy of the Year in Steubenville, Ohio, which is right across the border here in Steubenville. So those are our current academies, and I think it's worth mentioning that we are sort of grant supported in what we do. There's a variety of grants that various schools get, and we help them implement the academic portion of their grants, implementing STEM resources and some foundational software that we use. And we have a multifaceted partnership with Skillsoft. We work with Pearson Digital, the National Education Foundation, SUNY Potsdam. We kind of all work together. So that's as much as I'll ever say in a presentation together. I'll stop, and then I'm going to, instead of doing all questions at the end, if you don't mind, my typical presentation format is 8 minutes max, and then I stop and I ask for questions just to make sure everybody's still sort of engaged. And I'm willing to play with the presentation and push it in a direction that other people would like me to push it in. I've certainly got lots more content to go through. We haven't even hit Minecraft yet. but I'll stop and ask for any question. And yes, there are a lot of old school games back there. So that was one of the questions in there. Let me pull up one you probably recognize. Here we are. There's one. Let's see if I can go back to screen share and turn that off real quick. All right, back. There's one.
Doom. Yeah.
So that's Doom. And there's plenty more back there. The reason I bring up Doom is I was just at a conference called the Games, Learning, and Society Conference, and John Romero, the maker of Doom, was there. One of the makers. He was on the team that made Doom, along with his wife, who's from Ogdensburg, New York, which is only a half an hour away. It's also worth mentioning, if we're going to look at Doom, that you got to bring up this one. Many of you haven't heard of this. But basically, John Romero's biggest bomb of all time is this game, which nobody ever thought would get released, and he spent $1 bazillion on it and made no money. Kind of ruined his reputation a little bit. He's into, the reason I bring up John Romero and Doom, he's into making MMOs for STEM education. He was just speaking at the conference, much like MIT does. You know, MIT Labs has got that nice... So MIT Labs was at the last conference I was at, along with Utah State, University of Madison, Wisconsin, and a few others. I think USC was there. Sort of the major players in the United States as far as labs go. And labs are kind of co-creation spaces that are sister to the university. So you come up with the ideas in your classes, and to actually make them manifest, you push them over into the lab space, which is kind of a combination of private money and university money.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I'll kick off. I've got a couple of questions. Because we're, you know, obviously a university, we, you know, my role, I guess, is to encourage the use of media and using a lot more, you know, whether it's you know, setting up a game or a scenario and stuff like that in higher education teaching. So I guess my question was more centered on that, the first one. So would you be aware of any instances where higher education's using the growing trend of incorporating games or game-like elements, you use the phrase gamification, within a higher education setting? Have you seen that happen? I know you probably do it yourself. But.
Yeah, I do it myself, and I try to model a lot of what I do off what the people at USC do. And what they will do is they'll gamify. Like, for example, in one of my classes, they gamified their class in a certain way, and instead of giving out numbers in my class for their final grade, I gave out coins and stars. So they had to earn 100 coins to get a star, and 4 stars was a 4.0. So those are sort of like fringe, I would say, things. That's the gamification, and that's everywhere. I think that you don't have to go any university you could go to, and there's got to be a half a dozen good examples of people gamifying what they do in their classrooms in some way, shape, or form, especially if you go to business programs, and I'm in a business program now. Gamification and marketing are kind of tied together pretty heavily. So the catch, though, to sort of fully answer your question, is about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a bit of a backlash against gamification. And people saw it as a little too cheap and a little too easy, and they really were kind of upset because the marketing folks had picked up on gamification and kind of run with it, and they really saw that as a cheapening of what they did. And so game-based learning or gameful learning seems to be the new buzzword or catchphrase, if you will. And that means really getting into things a little deeper. And I think that the sort of corollary with that is deep learning. And so I think you'll see deep learning as emphasis. Wherever you see deep learning, there's likely to be a simulation or a game of some sort somewhere in the center of that deep learning, whether it's a formal, you know, MMO that somebody's developed or some sort of deep learning space where there's some, whether it's a game or not, it's going to be authentic and complex and involve problem solving. And it's just so easy to take complexity and problem solving and then add little competitive pieces to it and targets and goals, and you've got yourself a game, even if it's not necessarily a great game. So yeah, I would say the emphasis now is this transition from gamification to deep learning and complex problem solving.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess that sort of question came from, we've heard how people set up role plays, and, I've heard of ones where they just do it via email, and, people take on the character, but it's just basically, you're the character while you're emailing. But there's so much more that you could add to that it, like you say, would turn it into more of a game, if you like, where
yeah, exactly.
Rather than just a role play.
History is an easy place for that. Drama's been playing games forever. Of course, if you go to PE programs, they do games constantly. So there are university spaces. It's becoming a little more mainstream. There's a funny story I should tell. Is before I was tenured, myself and another junior colleague, pre-tenure, we're doing a research study on Grand Theft Auto. And the research study was about what happens when you give people, this is sort of about how people role play, to talk about a little bit about role playing. And the idea is we gave them the role of a firefighter, and we put them in a virtual world in front of a fire engine dressed as a firefighter and said, go put out fires, and here's the rules for putting out fires. And so they would sort of zoom around the virtual world trying to put out fires, but really what we were studying is deviancy, to see how quickly they deviated from the role we prescribed them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of covert, it was kind of interesting, and what made it a little even more interesting is we set it in the world of Grand Theft Auto. So all they had to do was veer off just a little bit, and all of a sudden you're mowing down pedestrians with your fire engine.
Yeah.
Or you're jumping out and grabbing a gun and taking them out with a flamethrower or whatever. So the results of the study kind of showed that men in particular deviate very quickly from the role. They sort of, it's kind of that willingness to explore, damn the consequences. I don't know if we repeated that now. This was about 10 years ago. Would you see maybe women a little bit more willing and easily sort of jumping off script and exploring? But the funny story about it is that we had all the senior tenured professors peering over our shoulder and looking in our office and whispering behind closed doors, those guys are playing games in their classrooms. So it was like, we were doing something wrong. There was something, we weren't doing what professors were supposed to do. This was something.
Yeah.
But now if we were to do that, people say, oh yeah, they're just doing game studies. So there's been a bit of a normalization that's happened. There's no more shame. That's why I get away with wearing this hat and nobody is really worried about it.
Okay. Does any of our participants in there have any questions for Tony just at this juncture?
I'll look in the chat.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sure Tony has used Minecraft. Yeah. I think he's going to get to that.
I have, and I will be demonstrating. So yes, we'll be definitely looking at Minecraft. It's my favorite new tool, for sure. Okay, so I'm just going to jump around a little bit here if you don't mind. So I've talked about two of my roles, one of which is my Academy's director. I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. Not too much more, but just like how can you get involved and in what capacity. And so I'm screen share back over to that other screen if you don't mind. So you guys should see. So you can see some of our grants and how they support what we do. We also have Adopt a School. One of the things I'd like to point out is this page over here. So if you look up here, it's academies.cyberlearning.org. And STEM Resources is a page I just put together maybe a week ago. And I'm still adding to it, but I'm being very cautious about what I add to it. And the idea, you can read that, of course, but I've highlighted 4 different partnerships we have. And I guess I'm using the word partnership a little loosely. We have definitely a partnership with MinecraftEDU. They're sort of the educational outreach of Mojang and Microsoft. And they're not officially part of Microsoft, but they do a fantastic job. And they also do a very important job, and that's host servers. because we find it technically very difficult to have our schools host their own server. So by removing that technical barrier for a relatively inexpensive $20 a month, we can have an individual school have their own server, and I'll be demonstrating that later. PBS Nova Labs is willing to do some professional development for us. So really what this all centers around is two things. One is professional development for university faculty and teachers. In other words, what are the games? How do I use them? How can I demonstrate that they're effective? How do I know they're effective? What assessments are in play? Kind of all of the educational technology, pedagogy stuff. And then, of course, it's the students and how they interact with it. And so they do some webinars for us to do a little bit of that professional development. I'll point over here, Lego Robotics. I'm actually going to jump to it. If you've not done anything with Lego Robotics, start tomorrow. It is fantastic, and First Lego League is really good. So I can't recommend Legos enough, and Minecraft, more or less, is virtual Legos. So we'll be jumping to that in a bit. So Lego Robotics is a big hit in my book, and it's something that starts as robotics, and then it moves its way up to what we call the First Tech Challenge, which is a little more free form, and then all the way up to the university level where people are designing robots in competitions. And there's been some like movies and mainstream media about that in recent years as well. So I do recommend Lego Robotics. Code.org is fantastic. Have you all done your hour of code? Give me a yes if you've done your hour of code in the chat. Let's see what we've got here. And if you haven't, well, I understand if you haven't. So give me a yes if you've done your hour of code.
I've done my 5 minutes, Tony.
Yeah, you've done your 5 minutes? All right.
Yeah.
As long as you've seen code.org.
Yeah.
Now, code.org is fantastic, and it's really, really high quality. The most impressive things I saw was when I used it with my class, we recoded Flappy Bird, which I hope you've heard of Flappy Bird. And the neat thing about it is you can click on a link and send a text message to somebody's phone, and they can click on the text message and play the game right there on their phone instantly. So bypassing that whole development cycle where you have to like get, you know, it's long, complicated, but just to be able to see something work on your phone is pretty fantastic. So code.org is another one that I highly recommend. And then we have some other things down here where you can see some sort of, these are smaller pieces down here typically, and maybe a little less mainstream. But I'm going to be adding to this. I'll probably have 50 before the end of August. So these are all of our STEM resources, and this is just a start of that webpage. If you have any STEM resources, you can see, I think, Brian, you sent this one to me.
Yeah, I came across that one a little while ago.
And it's funny, the guys from MIT were at the conference, and I saw the guy who was on the video talk, and this thing never even came up. And so even the conference where I spent 4 days talking about STEM, this never came up, and I looked at it and I said, my God, this is fantastic, so I had to put it up here. So
yeah,
really,
it is a pretty good one.
Yeah.
But I really haven't found my way around it that well though yet. But I can see the benefits to it, like there's good things in it. But
so let me do this. I'm going to throw out a term here, and maybe we'll have a little chat discussion about this. A bridge activity. So I'm going to throw out this term, bridge activity. When I say bridge activity, if I can make this interactive a little bit, what do you guys think of when I put out the terminology bridge activity?
If anyone would like to answer, we could either use the chat pod or you could just put on your microphone just to make, like we say, make it a bit more interactive, show we're all here. So would anybody like to have a go?
Sock it to me. I'm ready. Scaffolding. I love that word. Yep. Connecting. Good. 2 for 2.
Go, Sonal.
Oh, there's many more, though. I'm going to throw one out there. Let's see if I can. Joining together concepts. Yep. So connecting. So if I had to say, we have a game, and we have learning, and then I were to say games, bridge, learning, does that help a little bit? So the idea is the bridge is a series of connecting activities that connects the games and the learning. And if you don't mind, I'd like to do a little sharing. I've got, I'll pop over here for a second.
Well, while you're jumping there, Tony, I guess that was one of my questions. I've got a 12-year-old daughter, 8-year-old daughter that both play Minecraft, and they do spend a bit of time on it, I have to say, and I do wonder what the bridge I could, or whether I need to supply a bridge to take it from them building stuff and playing a game to actually I myself find it difficult to find that bridge in Minecraft of when how can I show it to get them to learn things through it as well.
I gotcha. No, that's a great question. Do you mind if I pull something up to help answer that?
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm going to pull up a book chapter that I wrote for ISTE, and you guys are probably familiar with ISTE, I would think. And first of all, I'm about to do a screen share of something that I think is quasi-legal, so don't be blabbering this around. But over here, you can see I've done two things I've done that are probably quasi-legal. Is at academia.edu, I put every one of my articles or book chapters that are more than a year old. So I'll give whoever I published with a year to have it for themselves, and I put it up there. And if they say take it down, I take it down, but I just leave them up there. And so if you go here, I list these are publications, and here are sort of, well, not all of them, but the sort of peer-reviewed publications or books or that sort of thing. Conference proceedings I tend to not put up here. Maybe I should. But in any case, here's the book chapter, and it goes through, I basically just, took pictures of it. And I think if you look in here, there's all sorts of benefits and advantages and disadvantages. But here's some of the prescriptions. And one of the main prescriptions I have, without going into sort of major detail, and you obviously won't be able to read that, I just pointed out that it's available for anybody after this is done. And what I can do is I can actually, because this is a sort of chat, I can just throw that in there, and you can click on that link and you can look at that book chapter. And what it does is it gives advice, and one of those main pieces of advice that I have is you need to be an expert as much as possible, because the bridge doesn't happen unless the two people are communicating. And like any good communication theory, if you think of like Schramm's communication model, I can send a message, like wearing a Mario hat, but if you don't have any idea who Mario is, or why in the hell is this guy holding a plunger, all you're going to do is think I'm just this whack job, But if you know who Mario is, you might actually appreciate this a little bit. So, if I were to give this to some groups of people, they might have any idea what I'm talking about. So with the two people, if they're sort of connected in an overlapping domain of experience, then you can actually communicate really well, and you know how to communicate almost naturally. But when one person has experience, or one group has experience that another group doesn't, then the communication is very difficult. So there is an extra burden when you use games, and one of the first burdens you'll have is you need to play the games, and you need to understand them. And
Tony, I'm not sure whether I like that answer, Tony. That means I'll have to start playing Minecraft.
That's right. Or at least look over her shoulder or his shoulder as they play.
I have had a couple of goes, but I ended up digging a big hole and couldn't get out of it, and then I gave it.
Well, I've got something for you if everybody, and in fact I'm willing to share this with you. So anybody's here in this presentation, what I'll do is I'll make an offer to you, and that is, if I can pull this up, let's see if I can find it. There it is. There you go. Ba-doom. So this is MinecraftEDU. You guys can see this pretty well, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay. So what this does is it gives a tutorial, and it starts you off. And this is how we start off all of our academy directors and teachers when they're a little bit intimidated and they're not sure how to do it. Is they've built this, MinecraftEDU has built this tutorial world where the first thing it does is say, here's your mouse, look around. So that's your kind of basics. And then you can see here it's the WASD. So it really starts from absolute foundational basics. And you walk through, follow the blue line, and you can see these are information spaces. This is a tutorial. Main thing is to have fun. So I'm not going to go through the whole tutorial, but I am going to kind of show you that it walks you step by step and slowly. So next thing, and you can see I just ran a whole length, and all I'm learning to do is to jump. Spacebar, jump, spacebar. So I'm just going to quick hop over here into story M, and I'm going to do a quick, where's my creative mode self? So I should be able to now, okay, so you can kind of see here I just put it in creative mode, and not being restricted to the, the typical dimensional plane. I can show you what they've developed here. So you can kind of see down there that that's the beginning space, and then you walk out of those stairs and kind of walk over here, and then it brings you into the next tutorial space, which is over here, and then it kind of walks you over to the next tutorial space, and so on until you kind of get all the basic tools down. Because I was in the same boat as you, where I'm like, I don't know how to play this game at all, and I just sort of went through a few tutorials, and I kind of figured it out. And you can kind of see here, this is another space that they have to interact with, and I'll kind of bring it over here. The draw distance is a little slow on my computer, so you'll just have to wait for everything to populate. It's just trying to do a lot of things at once, and my RAM's being used for web browsers and videos and everything else. But as you,
no, we can see it pretty well, but it's all coming together. Yeah.
It's all going to kind of build in here in just a second.
Yeah. So, Tony, just one question. I have had a bit of a play around with Second Life, getting onto virtual worlds and stuff. But in Minecraft, you can have people from different places in the same place at the same time. Can they communicate with each other? I just haven't seen whether they... So they can, through it, like a chat pod or whatever?
Yeah, I'll pop that up for you. So basically, if you see, as soon as I start talking, it starts talking. So I can, hey, like, hey, come over here. I have something cool to show you. So that's the basic chat, and of course you could do like a Google Hangouts or something else if you wanted to. So what we do is we give each school we work with 30 concurrent licenses, so up to 30 students can work at a time, and MinecraftEDU gives you no limit to the number of users. So we can have 600 users from a school for the price of 30 licenses, which is fantastic. Yeah. So that you can give every kid in the school access to Minecraft, and what we do is we provide some foundational software, and this is the rub, I guess. If you don't mind, I'm going to hop back to myself here for a second. And this is probably a question that maybe I'll ask rhetorically. Oh, hold on a second. Let's see if I can get over here. And pop that off. Okay. And that is... Okay, we're back. Sorry, where's my train of thought?
Well, but I guess going back to my first question was, from Minecraft, what do you see kids or anybody learning from playing that game?
Right. Well, two things. It's a different type of learning, and that's the first thing you have to accept. And so we started with gamification, which is kind of that shallow learning, motivate you to do the regular learning that we're all familiar and comfortable with. So when we go into our academies, thank you for sort of pulling me back on track, Ryan. It's getting late here, early there. Is we typically have teachers who are really worried about state testing, and not just a little bit worried, but their performance as teachers is being measured by how well their students perform on those state tests. And they don't want to hear anything about extra deep learning games until somebody gives them the confidence that my students are going to do well in this state test. So the first thing we do is we provide some foundational software involving learning analytics. So it's online, it's customized to the individual learner, it's produced by sort of a startup arm of Pearson called Pearson Digital out in Arizona, in Mesa, Arizona, and I visited their headquarters. And basically it's run by a bunch of educational technologists, many of which are from Arizona State. They're really good people. It changed my opinion altogether of who I was working with when I went and saw. It was just a bunch of people like me and you who have resources that we don't have access to. They use teachers with experience, and they have artists who are like legitimate artists and sound designers and programmers all together in this multi-story startup sort of oriented building, and they produce software that adapts to individual learners and brings them up to grade level. And so this is a little bit like, I don't know, like Pink Floyd, you can't have any pudding until you eat your meat. So we make the students eat their meat, so to speak, knowing it's good for you, and it kind of tastes good. I mean, everybody would love to just eat pudding all the time, I suppose. But, you know, the meat's good for you, and it doesn't taste so bad, and that's what Success Maker is for our academies. It provides a foundation, and that foundation gives assurances that those students are learning the basic skills of math and reading before we give them access to the STEM activities. I wish I could say we could take each school and transform them into a complex problem-solving, Montessori-based, deep learning environment.
Yeah.
But that's not realistic. And I sort of have to operate in the real world when I put on my hat as National Academies Director. And we have to acknowledge the fact that these teachers have real concerns about these basic skills. So, yeah, and I'll provide a link to that Minecraft tutorial for sure. So, yeah, so once we do that, then we can move into those more complex problem-solving environments. And in terms of outcomes, this is where the answer might not please you so much. The more scripted and pre-scripted the outcomes are, the least like the real world it is. So you've got this dichotomy where you are assessed and you have this curriculum, and you know I have to be assessed based on this curriculum, yet you know once you hit the real world, and you know just as much as I do, that when we're presented with problems, they don't come with prescripted answers, and we have to be creative, and we have to think out of the box, and we have to use all the tools at our disposal, and sometimes come up with creative solutions that maybe nobody has ever thought of. And that's the type of training that we encourage with our STEM proper activities, those resources we showed you there. And that's what Minecraft does, is it gives you that, it's three things. It's exploration, play, and fun, which we've talked about. But there's two more things it does. One, it does digital literacy. And the thing about digital literacy is that provides as much of a foundation for future success as does math and reading. So digital literacy is critically important. How do you install a map? How do you install a mod? What does it mean to program? How do you get the components of the system to work together? And then there's the general game properties, which the core game mechanic is building and crafting rather than killing and looting and that sort of thing. So the core game mechanic is itself. A lot of people call Minecraft something to the equivalent of what like a drafter or an architect would use. It's very similar to that type of software. So you think it's sort of the same way with the components and the building blocks that build up to the bigger structure. So digital literacy is the second piece. And then the third thing, and this is also very important, this is one that will lose people a lot of jobs or prevent them from having access to certain jobs, is digital citizenship. What does it mean to be a citizen in a digital environment? What does it mean to cooperate, don't go around blowing up other people's structures with your dynamite. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And for some reason, if you think about people playing Xbox and PlayStation, the online environment and the exposure to the type of culture they're exposed to in those environments is almost 180 degrees opposite what they actually should be doing. People sort of are rewarded, you know, in a loose sense, for annoying other people, for trolling, for example. There's a skill. There's a skill set that 14-year-old kids will develop, and that is how to make somebody very angry. And they've gotten very good at, you know, like, for example, have you guys seen this? So this is the first thing you type in after you kill somebody, right? You mad, bro? And you know you're just rubbing it in. So it's like, it's clever. And it is a skill set. I'm not going to deny that, but it doesn't really train. Maybe in the bar a little bit after work, but so I like the idea that we're actually giving people a resource that teaches them complex problem solving, digital literacy, and digital citizenship, all of which we consider to be as important as math and reading. So while that might not translate to a specific curriculum, we think the skills are important. So what we've done is we've made it, and this is sad to say, but this is how we do it, we make it an add-on. We make it an extra. We hold it out as a carrot and dangle it so that they eat their meat, so eventually they can have their pudding. And that's how we've been treating it so far. That's how we square the circle, is we really don't put a lot of rules on it, and we don't want to prescribe a lot of rules on it because we think that's sort of antithetical to what it's meant for and what it does best. So it's a long way to get at the answer to that question, and I know it half dodges the question, because sort of one of the real questions is, well, how do I then embed learning objectives into those environments? How do I actually get and the answer is complicated, and one that you may not want to hear, and that is you really do need to learn the games pretty well, or buy a well-designed product like the one that MIT Labs does. That's a service that MIT, USC, Wisconsin, Utah, they're all providing that service. They have NSF-funded grants, and they're trying to do exactly that. Edge Software is another that I would recommend. They're trying to do this as well. So there's a lot of government funding in the United States that's helping create bridge activities so that there's less of a burden on the teacher to be an expert, and sort of softens the load for them so that they can get in there and do things a little quicker with those bridge activities. So that seems to be the new hot term. They don't call it scaffolding anymore. I guess that's kind of out. It's really just, and I'm going to put 3 things up here. This is in my book chapter. And so this is really the sequence with using any game, is you've got to do a briefing, some sort of action, some sort of debriefing. There's another way to think about it. Soften them up, give them something to do, and talk about it. So essentially the bridging activity then is, you lay the foundations for the bridging activity and the debriefing. You watch people. I just got done doing a class in teaching and learning with simulations and games, and the hardest part is that teachers tend to sort of sit back when the game happens, wait for it to be over, and then re-engage with their own set of preconceived ideas about what the students should have learned, rather than, as the students play the game, get more engaged, lean in, look over their shoulders, watch what they're doing, and then you can actually bridge what they did, not bridge what they should have done. So I guess that's one of the things that my chapter does pretty well, but my class does a whole lot better, is tell you, sort of go through and explain how to conduct a game really, really well. And it starts with a good briefing, then a good sort of action piece, and then a good debriefing. Thank you, Sanal.
No, probably so.
Yeah, she has to.
I guess, does anybody else in there, whether it's those people that are participants, you can all turn on, you've got the ability to turn on your audio and your video if you want to ask a question of Tony at this point.
Yeah, and can I promote my game that squares the circle before you do that? The Teaching Bad Apples game, made at SUNY Potsdam, here in SUNY Siberia, and you can get it at thegamecrafter.com. So there's the link, and I'll throw up the link on there afterwards as well. The reason I mention it is if you're into pre-service teaching, it plays like Cards Against Humanity or Apples to Apples, where you come out with crowdsourced scenarios. These are real scenarios that happen in real classrooms. For example, a student with serious behavioral issues threatens to stab you in front of the class, which that happened to a teacher. And we have about 150 ridiculous answers that we call the teacher's heart of darkness. So every teacher has this. They have these thoughts that they love to do, but they can't do them. I don't know if you can read that.
Yeah.
Right? And so here's another one. So you get the idea. We've got 150 of these, and what it does is it allows pre-service teachers to work, play alongside some experienced teachers, either their professors or some master teachers. And after the round happens, the bridge is simply to say, well, what would you really do? So the action softens them up and gets them laughing and sort of loose, and then you can talk about real solutions to these very difficult problems. Yeah. So that's Teaching Bad Apples, and I guess I have to plug that because we just sort of finished this up about a month ago, and my students are very proud of it, and they should be. Yeah. So anyway, I'll take questions now.
So anybody would like to ask a question? You can put your...
Yep.
There we go. Chris has got a question. Beyond STEM, we have a number of different faculties here. One of them is built environment, so architecture and things like that, which you sort of touched on with Minecraft as sort of a draftsman may look at Minecraft. But again, the humanities, any games and things like that that you can think of?
Yeah, actually I do. There's a game, I hate to be Minecraft here, but there's a thing called World of Humanities that's one of the main Minecraft maps, and it basically goes through cultures, and it's really fantastic. Another resource, so basically it has cultures from around the world with quests based in those cultures, understanding the people, the places, the architecture, and those sorts of things. And it's funny, the other Sydney, Nebraska, is where we have our Minecraft expert, and a guy named Rick Meyer uses the World of Humanities, and I'm going to say the other Sydney. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to anybody here if Brian, you'd like to connect us. But otherwise, Rick is our expert and has used the World of Humanities. And then another resource that I'll point out is a guy I went to grad school with who runs the lab at the University of Wisconsin named Kurt Squire. And you probably have heard of him, and he does a lot with the game Civilization. And another one you may look to, and this is classic, is SimCity. There's a lot in SimCity embedded inside of that. More than just urban design, there's a lot of sort of culture built into it. So in terms of humanities, yeah, there's lots of games out there. I think that you really just kind of have to get into the and this is my sort of #1 recommendation. If you haven't gotten there, find let's see if I can find this. Find a professional space to interact in. Mine happens to be the Games Learning Society and the Association for Educational Communications and Technology. That's Games Learning and Society, GLS. And AECT, which I'm not going to spell that all out, but that's Association for Educational Communications and Technology. There's some other good organizations. Basically, you talk to a bunch of like-minded people who are doing good work. I'm just like the tip of the iceberg. I'm just one guy here in Potsdam, New York, wearing goofy hats, and there's a whole bunch of other people out there who kind of do similar things. Actually, it's time for me to put the Zelda hat link back on. So yeah, I think there are lots of good communities out there, and I think the reason I do these things, Brian, and I very much appreciate you giving me this opportunity, is I like to put myself out there, as I consider myself to be a bridge between anybody interested in K-12 education and games. That's my space, that's my professional space, and there's a lot of other people interacting in that space, but maybe what I do really well is I can communicate very well with teachers and administrators, as well as academics, and of course the third part of the triangle is the students, and I seem to be kind of well positioned in that space. There are some people who are much better in the academic space in terms of publishing. They tend to be more into, I guess they have more resources than doc students to do work with them, is really the truth of it. And then for me, I just happened to be in a space with a few opportunities that I took advantage of, and now the National Education Foundation allows me to reach into schools and do some really fun and important things in schools. And we are branching out to India, and we're looking at international relationships as well. So even if it's as simple, we have, and I forgot to mention this, we have a digital literacy course developed at SUNY Potsdam. And if anybody is interested in that, I can give out free IDs, because we developed it so we can kind of do what we want with it. So if anybody wants some IDs, it's a 12-hour course. We recommend it for middle school students, and it gives them, remember we talked about foundations for math and reading systems, it gives them a foundation for digital literacy. So don't think of this as a one and done. Think of this as a start of a relationship, and that's how I kind of want to see this, is my network becomes your network, kind of like genealogy.com. You know, you branch out and find somebody else who's been doing research on your family, and suddenly it opens things up, and that's how you want to kind of look at me.
Yeah, I guess Graham's question there, you know, like there's a thing with universities, you know, we're all tied to a sort of learning management system and course contents all in there. If you were to actually, you know, go out and bring all the students into a Minecraft, you know, environment, that idea of bringing content into it as well.
Yeah, can I show you something, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to answer that question if I could. I'm trying to look to see where it is. I'll have to. There it is. Okay, so this is the MinecraftEDU interface here, and if you go here and go to resources, and you don't need a username and password to do this, but if you go to MinecraftEDU and go to resources, they have a world and lesson library. So what I said up here is I said basically create your own maps, create your own maps, or you could use other people's maps, and they've done a lot of the hard work, and this is my favorite part of it. You can go in here and sort by subject area, and age level, and then world type. So if I wanted math, ages 7 to 9, and I want it to be an adventure, here are the maps that people have created at MinecraftEDU. You've got Decimal Island, Coordinate Hunt, Graphing Zone, and I can click on it.
Tony, just so, do they have, you know, like it says division farms, the graphing zone, do they have somehow problems within them that students need to solve, or is that how it works?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes they'll map to standards, so these are mapping to our Common Core standards. So yeah, the problems would be like I need to graph, basically introduction to graphing and coordinates is one that is easily done inside this world. Statistics and probability is one that I've seen. Computer programming is another one that I've seen. If you wanted to get into humanities, I think that you might want to go to, say, arts and social science, maybe, and see what they have there. So you have an overgrown ecosystem, collaborate for a sustainable ecosystem. So the sustainability being the theme there. So I don't know if this answers your question, but if there's ever a resource to integrate Minecraft into various content spaces, MinecraftEDU is, to me, first, second, and third place. It really is fantastic. They basically the thing they do, Brian, and everybody else, is curation. and that's a valuable service. You know, you go online and just start searching, and you have no idea where you're going and what's good and what's bad. And so these will typically be rated. You can see some of these are rated. Some of them have not yet been rated. And you can kind of, and some of them have curriculum materials built in with them, bridging activities. They're already part of that. So that's my, does that, yeah, I guess that answers it kind of sideways, is that there's for Minecraft, and as far as the other ones go, you're just going to have to see if maybe some teachers have developed some lessons or some bridging activities for what you've done. I can turn you on to some resources, I guess, but you know, each bit of software is going to have its own bridging activities, or not. I mean, some, honestly, some just don't. Like, you're probably not going to find a lot with Call of Duty. Maybe a few, but probably not a lot.
So then Graham just says, do you use Minecraft in your uni courses?
Yeah, of course they do. And in fact, MIT uses them in their computer science program. Oftentimes for their senior projects, they'll have to mod Minecraft. And there's another, I haven't put this up on ours yet. It's called the Digital Youth Network. Let's see if I can spell that correctly. So the Digital Youth Network, they offer courses. Now these are pay courses, so I'm kind of hesitant to put them on our website. I haven't endorsed anything on our website that isn't free, or pretty close to free, at least with a strong partnership we have with Minecraft. Digital Youth Network actually does programming for Minecraft and how to create your own mod. And to create your own mod, since Minecraft is Java-based, you have to learn Java. So basically, this is a way to introduce people to Java programming. And the reason I mention that in the context of university courses is that that's what students often do at MIT for their senior project, is they'll come up with a Minecraft mod that's a heavily programmed mod. So it does reach into the university level, but it goes beyond just creating content in pre-service teaching spaces. It gets in there and you start messing around with the clay and making kind of your own thing. And the reason they do that is because Minecraft is open. It's kind of out there for everybody to see. It's not like you have to go far to find source code and things to modify. So as far as I use it, I don't program, but I use it in my classes because I teach people how to use games for teaching and learning. So I just got done using it in one of my classes this past summer. So short answer is yes, we do.
All right. Well, I'm aware that, you know, we've just gone over the 12 o'clock mark here, and that's 10 o'clock for you, Tony.
That's right.
Yeah. So we might, if it's all right with everybody, if nobody's got any more questions, we won't keep Tony any longer. And thank you for a great presentation. I'm sure we all got some lots out of it. I got a lot out of it. Got a few notes here and a few things to follow up.
And when you're editing, you can look at me like this in the beginning and the end, and you know where you are.
Excellent.
All right.
Thanks very much, Tony, and I'll keep in touch by email. It'd be great.
All right. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye, everybody.